All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, glad to be back.
Today, we are going to be taking a look at the Texas anti-SLAPP law.
The
And
GCPA.
yeah, and this is something that should be very interesting to pretty much anybody who has ever posted a review online or, voiced an opinion at a town hall or even, just on social media or anything like that.
That's right. Or even just contacted their elected representative.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So this is super important for pretty much everybody.
absolutely, because free speech is the bedrock of our democracy.
Exactly.
It is enshrined in the First Amendment, and it's something that we need to protect vigilantly, and that's what this law is designed to do.
So, take us back to the beginning.
Yeah.
What is this law all about? What problem is it trying to solve?
Sure. So the Texas Citizens Participation Act, or DCPA as it's often called, is designed to protect individuals from lawsuits that are intended to silence or intimidate them for exercising their First Amendment rights.
These are the lawsuits that are sometimes called SLAPP suits, right?
Yeah. Exactly. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation, and they're essentially a way for someone with more money or power to try to bully someone else into silence.
It's kind of like you say something that somebody doesn't like and they just want to shut you up, so they slap you with this big lawsuit.
Yeah, they might not even expect to win the lawsuit.
Right.
The goal is really just to make it so expensive and time-consuming for you to defend yourself that you just give up and stay quiet.
So how does the TCPA actually protect people from these kinds of lawsuits?
Well, it does it in a few ways. First of all, it creates a very fast process for getting these lawsuits dismissed. So if someone files a lawsuit against you and you think it's a SLAPP suit, you can file a motion to dismiss under the TCPA.
So you could just say, hey, this is bogus and get it thrown out.
Right, and the court has to make a decision on that motion pretty quickly, so you don't have to spend years and years fighting it.
Okay, so it streamlines things a bit.
Exactly. And the other important thing that the TCPA does is shift the burden of proof.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Well, in a normal lawsuit, the person who is being sued, the defendant, has to prove that they didn't do anything wrong. But under the TCPA, the burden of proof is on the person who filed the lawsuit, the plaintiff.
So they have to prove that they have a legitimate case and that they're not just trying to harass the other person.
Precisely. And that's a really big deal because it makes it much harder for people to file frivolous lawsuits just to intimidate someone.
So it kind of puts the onus on the person filing the suit to make sure they actually have a case.
Yes, and that's really important for protecting free speech because it means that people are less likely to be afraid to speak out for fear of being sued.
And there's also that provision about legal fees, right?
That's right. If a judge finds that a lawsuit is a
SLAPP.
P suit and dismisses it, the plaintiff, the person who filed the lawsuit might have to pay the defendant's legal fees.
So it's like a double whammy for them.
Yeah, it's a way of discouraging people from filing these baseless lawsuits in the first place.
So it's not just protecting the defendant, it's also deterring future lawsuits.
Exactly. The idea is to make it clear that if you try to use the legal system to silence someone, you're going to face some real consequences.
So this all sounds pretty good so far, but I imagine there are some people who criticize this law as well, right?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, any law that deals with free speech is going to be controversial, and there are some people who argue that the TCPA is too broad and that it makes it too easy for people to get lawsuits dismissed even if they have merit.
So they're worried that it might protect people who are actually doing something wrong.
Right, and there have been some cases where the TCPA has been used to dismiss lawsuits that probably shouldn't have been dismissed. But on the other hand, there have also been a lot of cases where the TCPA has protected people who were legitimately exercising their free speech rights.
So it's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly. It's always a balancing act when it comes to free speech. You want to protect people's right to speak their minds, but you also don't want to create a system where people can abuse that right to harm others.
And that makes sense. And then also, the whole world of free speech is changing so rapidly these days with social media and the internet and everything like that. I imagine this law is constantly being tested and reinterpreted as new situations arise.
Oh, absolutely. The internet has created a whole new landscape for free speech, and the courts are still trying to figure out how to apply the law in this new context.
So things like online reviews and social media posts, all that stuff could potentially fall under this law.
Right, and it's really important for people to understand their rights and responsibilities when it comes to online speech.
Yeah, because even though you might think that something you say online is just, between you and your friends, it could potentially have legal consequences.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to be aware of the law and to think carefully about what you say online.
So even though this law is specifically about Texas, it really has implications for everybody everywhere because of the nature of the internet.
Absolutely. What happens in Texas can set precedents that affect the entire country and even the world.
Yeah, so what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about posting something online that might be controversial?
Well, I would say, first of all, make sure you understand the law in your jurisdiction.
Right.
Different states have different laws regarding free speech and online defamation.
And laws are always changing, too.
Exactly. So stay informed. And then, second, be mindful of your audience. Think about who might see your post and how they might interpret it.
Because context matters so much.
It really does. And finally, remember that words have power. Be respectful of others, even if you disagree with them.
Because ultimately, the goal is to have productive conversations and to create a society where everyone feels comfortable expressing their views.
Well said.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into the world of free speech and legal protections.
It really has.
And I think it just goes to show how important it is to stay informed about these issues and to think carefully about the ways in which we exercise our right to free speech.
Absolutely, because free speech is a precious right, but it's also a responsibility.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today, and we hope you'll join us again next time for another deep dive into a different fascinating topic.
I'm looking forward to it.
See ya.
Bye.
And for all of you listening out there, keep those conversations going and keep thinking critically about these important issues.
And stay curious.
And that's it for us today. So long, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.